Welcome, my constant reader friends. I'm Tad, and this is Tad Reads Books and Stuff. All right, so let's get into this one. I'm sorry, this may be a long video, but relax. Take it in pieces and parts if you have to. I'm going to try to go through it as fast as I can, but I want to talk about everything. So, Stephen King, 4 Past Midnight. I've just started this. I am only, where am I, 25 pages in. This, of course, is the next book in my Shorty King's project. And it's the one that I was supposed to read for this month. And I'm getting a real late start. This one, of course, has 4 amazing stories. Starts off with an introduction, of course, which Stephen King often does. Then you've got The Langoliers, Secret Window, Secret Garden, The Library Policeman, and The Sundog. So that's where we're at right there with that. Of course, Stephen King's Skeleton Crew I did finish, and this is what we're going to be talking about today. So, because I want to just do a brief discussion about each story in here, let's get the numbers out of the way. So this book was originally published in 1985 with the introduction and notes at the end. This version has 512 pages. On Goodreads, it currently sits at 3.97 stars. I think that's probably a good rating. I gave it 4 stars. It's not perfect. That's why I didn't give it 5. There are some clunkers in here, but overall, like I've said before, one of my favorite compilation novels that he's ever done. 22 stories, and I just use it as one of those, you know, when someone comes up to you and they say, hey, Tad, they probably don't come up to you and say, hey, Tad, but they do to me. And they say, if my friend or my daughter or whatever wants to get into Stephen King, where should I start? They don't want to read a 1,000-page book. Hell, they don't want to read a 500-page book. And they're kind of nervous about the horror aspect, but everyone reads Stephen King and they want to get into it. This is one of the books I tell them. I say, well, if they really want to read a book, I start them right at Carrie. Read Carrie. Read his first book. It's short. It's great. Good introduction. Or Skeleton Crew is one of my go-tos because you can read this, you know, at your leisure. Just read a story here. Keep it by your nightstand or something. Read a story there. Now, The Mist. We're going to start with The Mist. Of course, that's the first story in the book. The Mist is 114 pages. The Mist is pretty big, and we're not even really going to talk too much about The Mist, because most people, I think, know it. Most people have seen the movie, which I'm sorry, I don't like. I don't like the movie at all. It's one of the ones, you know, that I don't like. Even when I was watching it, and I'll watch some of the bad movies like Cat's Eye or something, because it's a Stephen King movie and I'm a Stephen King fan. Even The Mist, I have no desire to watch again. I don't know why I don't like it so much. Really, just read the story. The story is so much better. The thing I love about The Mist opening up this book is it's a great opener. It lets you know that when you're opening the cover of this book, you're stepping into Stephen King's world of unsettling, unnatural, a strange world of creepy horror. It's a good story. Please read the story. I know there's a lot of you out there that probably love the movie. I'm just not one of them. All right, the second story is Here There Be Tigers. This one, I think, is a palate cleanser after the, well, novella size 114-page Mist. And it's just a 6-page, quick 6-page story. And it, again, kind of a palate cleanser. It's like the embarrassment and fear of having to really go to the bathroom really bad when you're a young kid in the middle of class and you've got to stick your hand up and ask the teacher, can I go to the bathroom? And she's going to make fun of you, and the girl you like is going to know that you got to go pee or something. It's a quick story. Palate cleanser. All right, next, The Monkey. Yeah, 34 pages of brilliance. I loved this story. This story, I agree, Stephen. This monkey, this toy is just, it's always scared the crap out of me. It's creepy and scary. When the cymbals start clanging, someone's gonna die. And even the worst part about it is the damn thing keeps coming back. You can't get rid of it. You can't kill it. Great story. You got to read it from start to end. 34 pages. Awesome. Next, we go to another one that's only 6 pages long, and it's called Cain Rose Up. This is just another one of Stephen King's school shooting stories. If Stephen King has a book that was e-published about guns. If you want to look at his stance on guns, you can read that. It's interesting. But anyways, another school shooting story. All right, now we move on to Mrs. Todd's Shortcut. 22 pages. Again, I love this. This, to me, is like the perfect short, weird tale story a la H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, you're going to see there is a lot of Lovecraft in these stories. Sometimes quite blatant, otherwise, nods to Lovecraft. But you really see, his love for Lovecraft in a lot of these stories. And very many of them are Castle Rock stories and Lovecraft stories. So, this one. How fast can you get from point A to point B? You can measure it on a map. You can measure the road. You can measure as the crow flies. Or maybe you can bend time and space. Maybe you can take a different path. This is really cool. Please read Mrs. Todd's Shortcut, one of my favorites in the book. But then we go right from Mrs. Todd's Shortcut to The Jaunt. And I think this is just a continuation of the theme that we see in Mrs. Todd's Shortcut. And because in The Jaunt, it's pretty much the same thing. If we learn how to manipulate time and space, can we move from point A to point B in an instant? Anywhere. Another planet. Anywhere. How's that going to change our society? Now we can ship things faster and all kinds of stuff. It's pretty cool. It's a futuristic story. Science fiction-y. But where do we go in that instant? Mind, body, and soul. In between that instant, where do you go? It made me think of, don't laugh at me, it made me think of Harry Potter, right? So I'm going to go into the fireplace, and I'm going to, I'm going to use a port key and go to Diagon Alley, or I'm going to go diagonally. Anyways, where do you go though? Where does your body, those chemicals go in between walking into that fireplace and then ending up in Diagon Alley? Interesting. Fascinating horror story. Another awesome story. Only 24 pages long. Can't beat it. Then we go into The Wedding Gig. Wedding Gig, another 24-page story. Most of them are around that period, 20 to 25, 30 pages. Most of them aren't as big as The Mist. And then there's some that are just, I think, palate cleansers, real short, 4 pages, 6 pages. You'll see. Anyways, The Wedding Gig is one of his like hard case gangster stories. If you're familiar with his other writings, he writes these hard case novels like Colorado Kid, Joyland, and later recently came out. And they're really cool. I like reading them. Old-fashioned gangster stories. This one involves a wedding band. Pretty simple, pretty fun. Give it a try. All right, we're getting through these pretty good. Next, we have another, I'll call palate cleanser, only 4 pages long. It's called Paranoid, a Chant. And this is pure paranoia written in a verse, kind of like a chant. Not the last story involving paranoid schizophrenia in these stories. Just a real quick 4-pager. Again, another palate cleanser. Let's move on to The Raft. Oh my goodness. 26 pages again of near perfect horror for me. He really is channeling H.P. Lovecraft here. I really think it's his nod or riff on The Color Out of Space in a lake on a raft. Very interesting. I love it. Now, I do understand the pushback that this story gets for its use of unnecessary gratuitous sex. Something that Stephen King just does. If you've read any of his books, he likes to throw some sex in there, and he loves boobs. He really loves boobs. But anyways, this is scary as F, man. One scary ass horror story. The Raft. All right, next. 19 pages to this one. This is called Word Processor of the Gods. As you know, if you're a Stephen King fan, there's tons of stories involve writers. And they say, write what you know. So Stephen King writes a lot about writers. And in this one, what if you had a way to write yourself out of a boring, depressing, horrible life into a good life with a good family, good friends, good job, future, things like that. The problem is, by doing so, you're going to eliminate these people in your life, currently in your life, that are causing maybe this horrible, depressive position that you're in. Would you do it? If you're eliminating them, are you really killing them? Because then they would never have existed. Something to think about. All right, so next we have another one of my favorite stories in this book, and it's only 16 pages long. It's called The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands. Now, this is a story from the club. If you remember back when we read different seasons, the winter story, the last story in the novel is, so it says, A Winter's Tale for Peter and Susan Straub, and it's called The Breathing Method. So, this is a story that takes place in the club. The club is a private men's club where the members have a period where they'll sit around, and one person's job is to tell a story. The stories are amazing, fantastical, scary, unbelievable, but supposedly true stories. Of course, we still see the butler, Stevens, who is the constant caretaker butler of the club. They comment about how he never changes, but does he? He says, oh yes, that story was back, during my grandfather's time or my great-grandfather's time. So it's transgenerational, I'm not the same guy that's been here for 100 years, or is he? Anyways, that's the club. I love the story. Another sit back, just enjoy the story. Another in the Lovecraftian frame that he's going with here. All right, so then we go into another one. It's only another story that's only 16 pages long, called Beach World. Not one of my favorites. A sci-fi story now, and this is a story about traveling in space and landing on different planets. These guys are either pirates or they're looking for scraps, whatever the reason. They land on this planet, and it's like landing on a beautiful beach. Everyone wants to go to the beautiful beach, but this beach is alive, and this beach will eat you. Anything that lands on this beach is going to be consumed by the sand. Cool story. Not one of my favorites out of all of them. Next, we have, this is almost a palate cleanser. It's only 8 pages long, and it's called The Reaper's Image. Interesting. Not so much of a unique story for Stephen King, but his twist on this theme of looking into a picture or a mirror. So in this story, it's an antique, handcrafted mirror that's being housed in this private museum. And in the story, there's a guy that's looking to purchase this possibly mirror because there's only 2 or 3 known to exist. But in this mirror, if you stare into it long enough or at the right time, you may just see a reflection of the Grim Reaper. And if you do, you're not gonna walk out. You're not gonna last very long. Not the greatest story ever, again, but fun. Another almost palate cleanser. It's only 8 pages long. Then we go into Nona. Nona is 30 pages, and this is another Castle Rock story of the many in this book. And this is just one crazy ass, violent as hell, blood-soaked ghost story. Taking place in, well, they're going to Castle Rock in the story. Interesting, very violent, but definitely one not to skip over. Very interesting take on a ghost story. All right, so if you're still watching, thank you very much. I just wanted to touch, a little bit on every story. Anything I've read or seen about this book, pretty much people just talk about, their favorite stories out of the book. But there's a lot of cool little things in here that like I said, it's not perfect. I didn't give it a 5. So there are some stories that aren't great, but thank you for staying. Next, For Owen. For instance, For Owen is 2 pages. Basically, it's just a short poem about Stephen's son, Owen. Real quick, I've met Owen. My ex-wife, who grew up in Bangor, actually went to school with Owen. And, he co-wrote Sleeping Beauties with Stephen King. And I got to see them together on the book tour for that book. But anyways, it's just a short poem for Owen. Next, we have Survivor Type. Whew. This is a good one. Only 18 pages. I did see some people writing, they were complaining about this book because it's short stories. That's what it is. It's short stories. Oh, I don't like short stories because you don't have enough time to develop the characters. Okay, whatever. This one is an amazing 18-page short story that will make you really question some things in your life. What would you do if you were shipwrecked on a deserted island? How far would you go to survive? What would you do to survive? How are you going to survive if you don't have anything to eat? Awesome story. All right. Next, Uncle Otto's Truck. 16 pages of Stephen King just getting off on one of his subjects that he loves. It wouldn't be a Stephen King story compilation if he didn't have a story in there that was about an evil possessed vehicle. Yep, another one. He loves them. Got to be in there. Not one of my favorites. None of them are my favorites in any of his stories that he's told. Even Christine isn't one of my favorites. But anyways, he loves them. Next, Morning Deliveries, or Milkman #1. This is a 6-page, crazy-ass, demented, evil, murderous milkman delivery guy. Some of you probably never even heard of this, but when I grew up, we had our milk, sometimes our cheese, chocolate milk, even eggnog in the winter, in Christmas time, delivered every morning in a little box set by our front door. Crazy story. Only 6 pages long. But then it goes into a 14-page story called Big Wheels, a tale of the laundry game, or Milkman #2. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Insanity, craziness. A guy, the milkman steals this guy's wife, and he goes a little crazy. Story about they work in a laundromat, maybe going back to the Mangler stories, the 2 different laundromat stories he's told in the past. I don't know. I don't have much to say about this story. Not one of my favorites, as you can tell. All right, only 3 stories left. Grandma. Oh my God. This is crazy. This is scary, creepy, witchcraft, Lovecraftian for sure. 28 pages, again, of one hell of a scary frickin' story. So, this is, and could you imagine this? Things like this must have happened to Stephen King. Who knows? But this young boy is forced pretty much to spend the whole day and into the night with his ancient, shriveled up, dying grandmother. And it's just, I mean, could you imagine this young boy? He's heard some stories about his grandmother. When you're a little kid and you go and see an old person, I'm sorry, and they want to hug you. She wants to hug him and kiss on him and stuff, and it just scares the pants off him. And he's got to spend the whole day there by himself with her. And, he's heard some things, like I said. She's known to be into some witchcraft, quite possibly even reading from the Necronomicon from time to time. They don't specifically say Necronomicon, but it is implied in the story. Another very Lovecraftian story. She even starts speaking like in tongues, but she says Shab Niggeroth and you know, words that, of course, Lovecraft uses in his writing. So really scary, very interesting. 28 pages long, awesome story. The next story, Ballad of the Flexible Bullet, another brilliant story. This one a little bit longer, 44 pages. And again, about writers or editors and writing. And really, this story, it's another of his descent into complete and total madness via paranoid schizophrenia, seeing little elves living in your typewriter and things like that, electricity causing brain damage, and it's a great story. 44 pages long, flies by. Now we're on to, let's go just on to the last one. It's called The Reach. It's 14 pages, and probably my biggest complaint about the whole book is not so much this story, but ending with this story. This story is a downer. This story really goes nowhere. I don't get it. It's pretty much a story about an old lady that has lived on this island where very few people live on her whole life, and it's pretty much old age, solitude, loneliness, and death. I didn't see the point of it. I don't know. I really wish it wasn't the last closing story. Of course, there's notes afterwards, but that's really my biggest downfall. It could have been done somewhere else, I think. Grandma and Ballad of the Flexible Bullet are so strong, such really good, scary-ass stories. They should have ended with those. Maybe even flip those around. Do Ballad of the Flexible Bullet and then end with Grandma would have been great. I don't know, but I'm not an editor. But anyways, so that's Skeleton Crew. That's another in my Shorty King Project. Trying to read one of his compilation novels every month. I'm behind. 4 Past Midnight is next. I don't know. I mean, that's a 700-some page book. I don't think that I'll be able to get it done for next week, but hopefully we'll see. All right. Thank you so much for hanging with me. If you've stayed this long, I love everybody who, even I've been getting a bunch of bad comments, nasty comments lately, and it kind of makes me smile, because if I'm getting that big that people actually are giving me crap for my videos, then maybe I'm doing something right. Who knows? That's the only way you can look at it, right? But anyways, if you found anything entertaining in my videos, please like, subscribe, and as always, leave me lots of comments. Not the bad ones, please. I don't care. I got thick skin. All right, until next time, peace out.